Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you live from NASA Community College on 90.3 WHPC. We are also streaming on the nccradio.org. That's the website for this great station. Anywhere in the world, nccradio.org, and you can see us. And of course, this program is later archived on Spreaker.com. So, hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You know why I say that? People say, you're shaking, you're talking in the morning, what you're talking about in the afternoon, we're talking about the evening for. My friends, you're listening now live on the show, but there are many people who actually watch us as well. Why? How can you watch us if it's a radio station? My friends, you ever heard of this? Give me an F, give me an A, give me a C. It's facebook.com/ WHPC. And of course, you can see it on our own page as well, facebook.com/ Perl. And if you go on the Facebook, you can actually post and let me know that you're listening and where you're listening from. And therefore, we'd like to say already welcome to everybody on the radio. And of course, to Gene Brandonston. Good morning to you, Gene. Thank you so much. But let me first begin by letting you know how important this day is on the Jewish calendar. Today, Sunday, June 29th, 2025, marks the 31st anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory. Today is the yahrzeit of the Rebbe. And on the anniversary of a righteous person's passing, we are told, we are actually encouraged to recognize that when a great person passes away, all the light that he planted in this world, whether it's the teachings, the good deeds, and everything that in which that person invested his life and being, shines very strongly on that day, so that we can all connect to and receive blessings of life, happiness, and wisdom. Today is a day when we can connect to all the vision and the insights of the Rebbe in so many different ways. And I'm going to soon share with you ways that we can celebrate today and to connect to the blessings and the light and the shine and the vision that shines so brightly today on the 31st anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe. So first, let me say good morning again to everybody listening on the radio, to Dr. Eitan Kelshavsky, to Rosemary Hoffman, thank you so much, and to Fern Rosenblatt, unbelievable, thank you so much, and to Richard Rottenberg from Hallandale, Florida. Whoa! Welcome, Richard, and welcome everybody. And so how should we spend today? Again, as I explained, today is the anniversary, the yahrzeit of the passing of the Rebbe, 31 years ago. I remember it very well. And on the day of a person's passing, and particularly a very righteous person, everything that the person represented shines, and we can connect to it. That's just like in our own personal yahrzeits. We connect, we're thoughtful, we reminisce about that person, and particularly a person as of the Rebbe's stature and vision, we can connect that blessing as well. So how do we connect? So I'm going to give you briefly 6 suggestions of how all of us can honor the Rebbe on this day. First of all, is the best connection, of course, is mind to mind, which means spend some time visiting Chabad.org and other places online where you can read up on the Rebbe's essays and videos about his teachings and plug one's mind into the Rebbe's ideas, and I'm going to share some of them shortly. So that's number 1. Go online and you'll find Rebbe.org or Chabad.org, and you'll get a chance to learn about how the Rebbe thought about this world and many other areas. Number 2, of course, we make the light real. A person shines on the day of his yahrzeit. How do we all remember our loved ones? We light a 24-hour candle. That's the customary on the anniversary of a close one's passing. So today we all have the custom on the yahrzeit is to light a yahrzeit candle. Number 3, another important aspect of how we connect is to partner with one of the Rebbe's institutions, whether here in the United States, in Israel, or wherever it may be, by making a donation to one of the Chabad institutions around the world. Number 3 of course, to remind ourselves, remember the 10-point campaign the Rebbe had, which included men putting on tefillin, lighting Shabbos, women reminding themselves to light Shabbos candles, at least two for married women, one for someone who's waiting to get married, and encourage other people to do the same. As we all know, one mitzvah can transform the entire world. Another suggestion I'd like to share with everybody is that we make a big effort to either visit the resting place of the Rebbe, which is called the Ohel in the Cambria Heights in Queens, or we can write a letter that is placed on that, and we can do it actually online, and where we write down that the Almighty God should open the gates of heavenly blessings for ourselves, for our family, for our friends at this very special time, and also to take on a resolution that of how we can be more of a positive influence on others as well. And the best way to do that, if you want to do it online, is called Ohel Chabad, OHEL Chabad.org. And there will give you the opportunity to write in today, and it will be delivered and put on the Rebbe's resting place, whatever blessings you'd like. And of course, number 6 is make some time today. We do that today to talk about the Rebbe, talk about his accomplishments, his vision, and the mission, of course, that all of us have is to prepare the world for the coming of Mashiach. So welcome again, everybody. Good to have everybody. Thank you for those listening on the radio and those who are watching on Facebook.com and /Anshel Perl. I'm going to share with you a fascinating insight that relates to Israel's destiny. Talking about Israel. Israel's in the news. And I'm going to take you back to the Rebbe's letter to Ben Gurion, who was the prime minister at that time, back in 1959. The Rebbe became Rebbe in 1950-51. This was 8 to 9 years later. I'm going to share with you a letter that he wrote to David Ben Gurion. As we all know, David Ben Gurion was born in 1886 and passed away in 1973. Now, Ben Gurion was 16 years older than the Rebbe, and in 1959, the relatively young Rebbe, right, as I said, he just became the Rebbe in 1951, formally, he wrote a letter to the celebrated first Prime Minister and founder of the State of Israel. It is a very historical document indeed. Only 8 years after he became the Rebbe, in this single letter, he tried to transform Ben Gurion and through him the entire state of Israel. So stand by for this. It took some time and lots of pain, but I'd like to suggest that we're slowly getting it. I'm going to read with you an excerpt from this incredible letter of the Rebbe to Ben Gurion, and leave it to your thoughts of how we see this very idea slowly coming into the land of Israel. This is part of the letter. The Rebbe writes to Ben Gurion, "It was once fashionable in certain circles to suggest that the Jewish religion and the religious observances were necessary for those living in the diaspora. Why? As a shield against assimilation. But for those who can find another antidote in the place of religion, particularly for those living in the land of Israel, within their own society, where the atmosphere, the language, and apparently that should serve as an ample assurance for national preservation. So the Jewish religion was superfluous. What needed in Europe was a burden at that time. And why burden yourself with all this minutiae in their daily life? You live in the land, you speak Hebrew, and then Fatik. But the Rebbe continues, this was in 1959, but the trend of developments in Israel in the last 7 or 8 years has increasingly emphasized the opposite view. That however vital the need for religion amongst diaspora Jewry, it is needed even more for the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. One of the basic reasons for this is that it's precisely in Israel that there exists the danger that a new generation will grow up, a new type of Israeli bearing the name of Israel, but completely divorced from the past of our people and its eternal and essential values, and moreover, hostile to it in its world outlook, its culture, and the content of its daily life. Hostile in spite of the fact that they will speak Hebrew, dwell in the land of patriarchs, and wax enthusiastic over the poetry of the Bible. And the Rebbe continues, I do not wish to dwell on this painful subject at all for obvious reasons, especially since I see no need for further elaboration. And one of the reasons that I fervently hope that this calamity will not come to pass. Eventually, members of that generation itself will vehemently rise up against that danger and will take measures to ward off the negative. Indeed, it is just recently that an intense ferment has been felt in Israel and abroad demanding a spiritual content to life. If a deeper probe is made, it becomes evident that the yearning is for something transcending the logic of man. The thirst of youth of our eternal people will certainly not be quenched by rationalizations and theories that are the product of contemporary mortals, which will share the fate of those ideologies which made their debut only yesterday and which are no more today. Here is the place for the law of Israel and Moses, the oral and written law, our independent values dating from the date the Jewish people stood before God, our God, at Mount Sinai, and the great voice that was heard, which did not stop, I am your God, do not have any other gods. And the Rebbe continues, needless to say, this is a letter written to Ben Gurion in 1959. I do not speak here of theoretical religiosity, which serves only as a purely philosophical world outlook, or as a subject of lectures at weekends and holidays. I speak of a pervading and practical way of life, which includes the weekdays too, and all such matters which are usually termed secular. Our faith is, and after all, essentially one of practical deeds. And the Rebbe continues, now is the ideal opportunity to transform the whole canvas of life in Israel and direct it into the above-mentioned channels. The opportunity is knocking at your door, for you have been granted the ability and the privilege to use it to the best advantage. A privilege and opportunity which are not given to every person, and the likes of which have not presented themselves for many decades. It is more than likely that the aforementioned lines will astonish you. Obviously, the Rebbe was a realist and understood going to the Prime Minister Ben Gurion, this was like, whoa, do I really imagine that by means of this letter I can change or influence an outlook many decades old, and in particular, the outlook of a man who has seen the fruit of his labors? But since, in my opinion, the situation in Israel is as described above, the situation itself, the essential truth of the idea, the unique and most wonderful opportunity granted you, it is they which speak, appeal, and demand. I'm sure that even without my letter, you have often reflected on this. But I cannot allow myself to pass over this in silence. This was the letter that the Rebbe wrote in 1959 to the President of Israel, the State of Israel, David Ben Gurion. Now, what I'm sharing with you today is how this is all coming true. A generation grew up doubting if the land even belongs to them, as we've seen engaging in never-ending compromises that has cost us so many sacrifices. It seems to me that we are getting there, though. If you look at the world today, allow me to continue this concept. The Rebbe's visionary words will ultimately materialize. Why now? Where do we go next after the war on Iran. Here is what Nir Manosi, a writer, said this week in a Zoom lecture, just before the end of the Operation Kalavi, the Rising Line. He writes, there are 3 stages in the return of the people of Israel to their land, he suggests. The state of Israel and its founders started with a national sanctuary. We wanted to be saved from persecution, from the Holocaust, from anti-Semitism. We wanted a place under the sun to lay our heads. That's why they blurred the Jewish identity and moved to an Israeli identity. They had no intention of influencing the whole world, only finding a safe haven. Just let us eat falafel in peace. This stage lasted until October the 7th, he writes, and then we paid a terrible price. The dream exploded. It hurts a lot, but reality is pushing us to be something bigger than that. In other words, we wanted to be just a villa in the jungle, and we didn't care if the jungle remained a jungle, but that's impossible. That's why these days we are moving into the second stage, a regional power. We are changing the reality, facing the Hamas, Hezbollah, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. That means getting out of the concept of managing the conflict or protecting ourselves with an iron dome. Today's Israel is a different place. I heard him and was reminded of the German Chancellor, who said last week that is, that Israel is doing the dirty work for the entire world. Others, even if they don't say it openly, know it. But that's not enough. This is an amazing stage, but our language is still political, military, and survivalist. The third stage, after national refuge and a regional power, is a global beacon. For the Jewish people to become what God intended them to be. Being a beacon is not being a refuge. It's the opposite. It's breaking out. Being an ambassador of blessing, of Torah, of peace, of faith, of spirituality, and holiness. As God says to Moses, all the families on earth will be blessed by you. It is realizing the famous verse, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, says, from Zion will come falafel. No, from Zion shall go forth Torah. To move out of the internal trauma mindset into a broad consciousness that affects the entire planet. Therefore, we must not get stuck in the second stage and just boast about ourselves and sing songs of praise to ourselves. It's dangerous to live now in hubris, in the perception of my strength, my strength in the might of my hand. We need to move forward to the third stage, to our destiny from which we fled. The world is looking at us and waiting. You see, Operation Kalavi is over. It seems to be over. Not really, because you know how it is. A lion has risen and woken up and roared, doesn't fall asleep so quickly. The people of Israel have woken up. They are in a different state of consciousness, and they will not go back so quickly. And the first to remind this is the current Prime Minister, looking at how he has been speaking in recent days. A truly new language from Benjamin Netanyahu. What did he say in his first press conference after the nuclear destruction by the American Air Force? He said, when I was first elected Prime Minister, I participated in the March of Living at the Auschwitz extermination camp. There I suddenly felt a strong need, he emphasized the word strong, to wrap myself in a talit. I wrapped myself in it and said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. 10 days ago, a few hours before embarking on the historical operation against the evil regime of Iran, I visited the Western Wall. This is from the press conference of Bibi Netanyahu. And there too, I suddenly felt a strong need. to wrap myself in a talit. When I first saw this picture with the talit, I wondered about it. We're used to seeing prime ministers with a kippah, putting on a yarmulke at the Western Wall, but a talit? Who suddenly gave him the talit? Was it the president of Argentina who was there before the operation began? Well, Netanyahu says at the beginning of his press conference, which was broadcast live on all channels, said that he simply felt a strong need to do it. I said a prayer for the success of our heroic pilots, our excellent soldiers and commanders, for the security of our people and the peace of our people. And today, after 10 days, I returned to the Western Wall with my wife. I wrapped myself in the talit again and said a prayer of thanksgiving and a prayer for continued success. Now, at the end of the long press conference, including questions in English from foreign media, Netanyahu said, "Are there any more questions?" So I want to say something else. I said, not jokingly, this is the Rebbe speaking, I said it from the bottom of my heart and my belief that the most important faction in the Israeli Knesset is Siyata Dishmaya, the divine help. We had tremendous heroism here from our fighters, from our citizens, tremendous help from our friends, but there is also the divine help of the Holy One, blessed be He. And for that, I thank Him on behalf of the generations of Jews who waited to establish our state, expected us to defend our future. This is what we do. Thank you. Now, some said this week, there's nothing to get excited about, right? And now you can hear people right now saying, after all, you know what? Netanyahu is a calculated individual. Everything is political. He understands that this is how he needs to speak to the people who support him. So first of all, I, yours truly, actually believe him this time. Why think after all these past months that the Jewish point hasn't arisen for Netanyahu to? He also has a neshama, just like everybody else has. After all, it happened even to the most distant and most assimilated Jew in Alaska. Why wouldn't it happen to the Prime Minister of Israel, the man who knows better than anyone how much human ingenuity and planning and heroism and daring were here, and how much the hand of God was there? Do you know how many deaths they expected when they approved the operation? According to the media reports, on the eve of the decision to attack Iran on the June 13th, 2025, the 17th of Sivan, there was a whole, I don't even really want to go through what they actually thought, how many people, how many civilians Chas v'sholom would be killed. Nevertheless, it is true that sadly we lost 29 whole worlds in this world. Whole worlds, every person's a whole world. But when it comes to the sum up the whole war, not only did the worst scenario not happen, but even the most optimistic scenario did not come true. Do you know why? Because the operation succeeded beyond all imagination and all planning. Hashem, the Almighty God, performed titanic miracles. This is not about one or two miracles or even 100, but there was a chain of miracles in which one caused the other. One sits on top of the other. If there wasn't the first miracle, there wouldn't have been the second. And if there wasn't the fifth, there wouldn't have been the sixth. Some of the miracles we all know about, such as the fall of the Nasrallah regime and then Assad. And about some we really don't know and may never know. Just think about the attempted assassination of Trump at the election rally. Try to imagine that shooter hadn't missed by a few centimeters. Where would we be today? And this is just one miracle out of thousands and thousands and many tens of thousands that the Almighty God, blessed be He, has performed for all of us, really for all of the entire world in recent months. Here's one of the most amazing moments. Israeli Secret Service operatives used a fake phone, they made a call to trigger what appeared to be an emergency meeting among Iran's top military leaders. and then targeted the location of the meeting and sent some children. It was a crazy story. According to the report published by the Jewish Chronicle, Mossad used Iranian communication channels as part of a coordinated disinformation campaign targeting top Iranian Air Force officials and luring them to the same location for what they believed to be an important meeting to eat kebabs. What Israel did was to create a fake phone call for 20 members of the Air Force, the senior staff, and calling them to a specific bunker in Tehran. This meant there was no one to give the order to fire the initial salvo of 1,000 ballistic missiles, as Iran had previously threatened to do. The Iranian military leadership was essentially crippled from the moment of Israel's first strike against the world's top sponsor of terrorism. Mossad had used falsified communications through Iranian channels to call the meeting, which successfully lured the entire senior leadership Azoi into one place, and then they delivered the sushi. You understand what's going on? So shortly before the first Israeli missiles struck other targets across Iran, the bunker was hit with a precision airstrike, eliminating Iran's top missile command, and they were all Azoi. As a result, no one was alive to give the command to strike back when Israel hit Iran with the first missile barrage. They were all busy davening mincha. This avoided profound danger. There's another angle that moved me from Netanyahu's words of faith. After the miraculous success of the pilots in Iran, I constantly feared that we will, God forbid, return to hubris. Azoi, the concept of koichem va'otzim yodi, osiyas achai lazeh, my strength in the might of my hand. After all, as we know, this is exactly what happened after the miracles of the Six-Day War. And then where did we end up? Sadly came the Yom Kippur War. Here, the process is indeed the opposite. We started from a terrible low of October the 7th, Simchas Torah, and in a fairly short time reached this dizzying success in Iran. But what a mistake it would be if, after the horrific awakening we went through on Simchas Torah, we return to military arrogance. And here, the Prime Minister, in a speech to the nation, at the peak of the moments of his life, humbly mentions the Creator of the world again and again. This has great importance, not only in relation to the millions of viewers, but also in relation to Hashem, to heaven. I believe that the Prime Minister experienced a Queen Esther moment when Mordechai tells her, Mi yadea im le'es hazos higat l'malchus. Who knows if it was not for this reason you came to be the Persian queen. Despite the profound sacrifice, he went for it, and the Creator performed miracles. So now, after Bibi has so miraculously fulfilled the mission his father assigned him, he can now move on to the next task in the chain of relationships. And what is that, my friends? To help return the people of Israel to our roots, to return the Shekhinah, the holiness, to our land, to our homes, and to the schools, to connect himself and the entire younger generation to the Holy Torah, without which we have no future, and to fight the progressiveness, those movements that are still trying to separate the people of Israel from their Torah, their identity, and from themselves. This and now is exactly the time. The Jew in Alaska is waiting, and so is the Jew in Tel Aviv. There is now a Jewish majority that is awakening and is returning to its roots. That wants a Jewish homeland saturated with Jewish faith and pride to inspire the entire world with true faith, with love and holiness. These are some of my thoughts, my friends, on this very, very important day as we reflect on the 31st anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe and how he wrote to the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, of blessed memory, reminding him of the importance and the holiness and the ultimate role of what Israel represents, not only to its people, but a standard of morality and holiness and a beacon of light and ambassador of goodness and kindness, an example to the entire world. Let me tell you about a unique miracle. Same idea. We're having the Rebbe, in our minds today. In a talk delivered, let me first say hello to all those who are listening. And we also want to say hello to Levana Lichter. Thank you so much for your comments. Levana is now known as Kiddush Levana. Hello to Jonathan Wolf. Hello to Sharon Jacobs. Good morning to you. Hello to Richard Rottenberg again. Today to Davida Zelikson. And today, let's see now, we have Heidi. Thank you so much from all the way from Florida, from Holiday, a place called Holiday, Florida. Unbelievable. And let's say, who else do we have? We have everybody else now listening. Thank you so much to Michelle Glassman Sprachman. Thank you so much. And so again, I want to tell you a little about a very unique miracle that we read about in the Torah portion for this week. In the talk delivered by the Rebbe back in 1991, the Rebbe asked an interesting question. If you know the Torah portion, we read how Aaron's staff it brought forth blossoms, produced budding fruit, and bore ripe almonds. Now, God did not simply make almonds appear on Aaron's staff. Rather, he stimulated in the full natural process, the whole thing. There was budding, there was blossoming, and then there came in the ripening of the fruit, as the Torah tells us. Like all of these things were seen on Aaron's staff. Why do you need all of this? Why do you need all this stuff? Can you imagine? As a proof that he was the leader, the bearing of fruit by a dry stick of wood would surely have been enough as a divine sign that God's choice of Aaron to be the leader was the right one. So you have a dry piece of wood, a branch, suddenly gives out fruits and fat. Is that enough to impress us? Why did it have to be all the three stages? Why did God simply not make almonds appear on Aaron's staff? Rather, he stimulated in it the full natural process of budding, blossoming, and the emergence and ripening of the fruits. Enough already. Why all of these things? So the Rebbe explains, because he wanted to teach a profound lesson. God wanted to teach us a profound lesson. The word nes, the Hebrew word for miracle, means elevation. The purpose of a miracle is to elevate those who experience it to a higher consciousness, to a recognition of the divine reality which underlies the natural reality we encounter in our everyday lives. But there are two types of miracles. There's a miracle which utterly disregards the laws of nature. We have miracles which, though they may be no less impossible by standard norms and no less obvious a display of the hand of God, nevertheless occur by natural means, employing a natural phenomenon and the process to achieve their ends. So at first glance, it might seem that the second concept of miracles, need to resort to natural process, makes it less of a miracle. It's all nature. In truth, however, a miracle that operates through nature is more elevating, therefore more miraculous than a miracle that supersedes it. A sudden, shattering change has not transformed nature. It has only gone beyond it. But when a miracle is integrated into the workings of nature, nature itself is elevated. Otherwise stated, a supernatural miracle liberates the person who experiences it from the natural order. A natural miracle liberates the natural order itself. So a miracle within nature is even higher than a miracle that's purely beyond nature. So God didn't simply make almonds appear on Aaron's staff. Rather, he stimulated in it the full natural process. It wasn't just a miracle of fruits coming out, but the miracle was that this dry fruit included all the typical stages of a natural growth: budding, blossoming, and the emergence and the ripening of the fruit. So Aaron's staff defied nature's laws and restrictions, yet it conformed to the phases of growth that the almond naturally undergoes. It transcended nature, but did so on nature's own terms. Why was that? To teach us that even the natural process itself is a miracle. And I would believe if you're a doctor, or even if you're not a doctor, just the fact that we keep breathing every day. Oh, you give this reason, that reason, and Baruch Hashem, the heart is going, and the kishkas and everything. We call it nature because we've gotten used to it. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. Oh, nature. As the Baal Shem Tov says, it was a miracle the first day, but we just got used to it. And so too. That's why every morning when we wake up, we say Maida'ani. We don't just take our soul for granted. We don't even take the fact that we can stand up for granted. There's a blessing to be able to walk. There's a blessing to be able to stand up straight. There's a blessing to be able to see. Because sometimes under the guise of nature, we forget that really everything is a blessing from God. So to teach us, in this case, that even the natural process itself is a miracle. Because this is what will endure forever. The ability to see in nature that is the manifestation of Hashem. That's why in current events in the land of Israel, as natural and as all the training and everything else is involved, in that natural event, what happened the last 12 days, we see the hand of Hashem. This is our calling, to realize that Jewishness and godliness is natural. Here is an example of this. I want to tell you about Ayelet Samarno. I'm not sure if Eitan knows this person. This is a secular Israeli Jewish woman who waged two battles that we should know about. This week, when her body of her kidnapped son, Yonatan, was brought back to the Holy Land laid to rest, we must remember his incredible mother. Ayelet, with unimaginable strength, acted on two levels. First, against UNRWA. Yonatan was kidnapped by this organization, which is supposed to work for the rights of refugees in Gaza. And Ayelet traveled all over the world to expose the hypocrisy. She repeatedly came to the UN in every forum to show the video that was so painful for her to see. What does she show? A UNRWA social worker dragging Yonatan's body along the ground and throwing him into his car. Last October, she was privileged to see the Knesset plenary unite in a rare way. 92 members of Knesset supported a bill to terminate UNRWA's activities in Israel. And I want to thank Eitan Kolshevsky for all the work that he did behind the scenes. But there was another life's work. Ayelet and her husband, Kobe, the dad, sat Shiva for Yonatan after they saw the video. But doubt always gnawed at Ayelet. She went to the experts, watched the film, and felt maybe there was a chance that he was still alive. One day, she saw Yonatan's tefillin at home and said to herself, I can't give them to anyone because Yonatan might come back. But I can get as many people as possible to put them on. The next day, she went to work with Yonatan's tefillin, met a colleague who had never put on tefillin, and asked him to put them on. Since then, she decided that not a day would go by without someone putting on Jonathan's tefillin. So she said, and she laughed, I became a secular Chabad emissary. Once she came to the Western Wall for an American family's bar mitzvah. The excited bar mitzvah boy asked not to put on the new tefillin they had brought him, but to put on Yonatan's tefillin. And one day, her two missions combined. She met a distinguished diplomat in Europe and asked, you are Jewish, right? Did you put on tefillin today? Here are Yonatan's tefillin. If he was killed, put on the tefillin for the sake of his soul. If he's alive, put them on in the merit of his salvation. Who could say no to a mother like that? This woman has inspired countless Jews in Israel and around the world to wrap tefillin. This is just a touch, just a small part of the global Jewish story being written these days in blood, in tears, in sacrifice, and with great pride. As we commemorate Gimel Tammuz, that's the 3rd of Tammuz today, the day of the Rebbe's 31st yahrzeit. The Rebbe's vision for the Holy Land, embodying the divine vision of Torah, rings ever more relevant, as we now living in a time of massive Jewish awakening. This is not a time to be passive, but for all of us to rise like lions and to usher in the era of Jewish returning to their truest and deepest essence and destiny and inspiring the entire world. May we see this materialize speedily in our days. Let me say hello to some of the new comments. Alana Blair, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Let's see now who else has joined us. Thank you so much. Let's see now. We're getting some. Okay. I hope everybody's seeing this clearly on the internet here. Okay, on Facebook, facebook.com. If you're listening on the radio, we can actually join us in the studio. I'm waving right now. I'm wearing a blue shirt, and facebook.com/Anshul Perl. Thank you very much. So I get the comments are that most people are able to get it clearly. So hopefully it's well. So again, let's return again to this blossoming staff that we're talking about, Aaron's staff. It's a baffling story. The Torah portion of Korach tells of the test of the staffs conducted when people contested Aaron's appointment to the high priest. And as we've been discussing, God instructs Moses to take a staff from each tribe, each inscribed with the leader of the tribes, the name of the tribe's leader. Aaron's name was written on the Levite's tribe's staff. The sticks were placed overnight in the holies of holies in the sanctuary. When they were removed in the morning, the entire nation beheld Aaron's staff had blossomed overnight and bore fruit, demonstrating that Aaron was God's choice for the high priest. Okay, this is what we've been discussing, the significance that all the aspects of blossoming and growing and fruits. What was the meaning of this strange miracle? God could have chosen many ways to demonstrate the authenticity of Aaron's position. What is more, 3 previous incidents have already proven to this very truth. We read about the swallowing of Korach and his fellow rebels who staged a revolt against Moses and Aaron. We know about the burning of the 250 leaders who led the mutiny and the epidemic that spread among those who accused Moses and Aaron of killing the nation. If these 3 miracles did not suffice, what would the fourth one be? You know, what would this 4th one be? What could it possibly achieve more? What then was the point in the message of this blossoming stick? One answer I heard from my teacher was this: the blossoming of the staff was meant not so much to prove who is the high priest. That was already certainly established in previous earth-shattering events, but rather to demonstrate what it takes to be chosen as a high priest of God, and to explain why it was Aaron who was chosen to this position. So what are the qualifications required to be a leader? Before being severed from the tree, this staff grew, produced leaves, and was full of vitality. But now, this stick is severed from its roots. And what happens? Of course, it becomes dry and lifeless. The primary quality of a Kohen Gadol, of a high priest or a man of God, is his or her ability to transform lifeless sticks into living orchards. The real leader is the person who sees the possibility for growth and life, whereas others see stagnation and lifelessness. The Jewish leader perceives even in a dead stick the potential for rejuvenation. How relevant does this story speak to our generation and our times? Following the greatest tragedy ever to have struck our people, the Holocaust, and the subsequent events of October the 7th, the Jewish world appeared like a lifeless staff. Mounds of ashes, the only remains of the 6 million, left a nation devastated to its core. an entire world went up in smoke. What happened next will one day be told as one of the greatest acts of reconstruction in the history of mankind. Holocaust survivors and refugees set about rebuilding on new soil the world that had been gone up in smoke in Auschwitz and Treblinka. And one of the remarkable individuals who spearheaded this revival was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose 31st yahrzeit passing is this day, today, Sunday, the 3rd of Tammuz, June 29th. The Rebbe and other great Jewish sages and leaders from many diverse communities refused to yield to despair. While others responded to the Holocaust by building memorials, endowing lectureships, convening conferences, and writing books, all vital and noble tributes to create memories of a tree which once lived but was now dead, the Rebbe urged every person he could touch to bring the stick back to life, to marry, have lots of kids, to rebuild Jewish life in every possible way. He built schools, communities, synagogues, Jewish centers, summer camps, yeshivas, and encouraged and inspired countless Jews to do the same. He opened his heart to an orphaned generation, imbuing it with hope, vision, and determination. He became the most well-known address for scores of activists, rabbis, philanthropists, leaders, influential people, laymen, and women from all walks of life, giving them the confidence to reconstruct a shattered universe. He sent out emissaries to virtually every Jewish community in the world to help rekindle the Jewish smile when a vast river of tears threatened to obliterate it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe urged his beloved people to use the horrors of destruction as an impetus to generate the greatest Jewish renaissance and to create rejuvenation. He gazed at the dead staff and saw in it the potential for new life. His new home, the United States, the Rebbe came to America in June of 1941. His new home, the United States, was a country that until then had dissolved Jewish identity. It was, as they used to say in those days, a treifene Medina, a non-kosher land. Yet the Rebbe saw the possibility of using American culture as a medium for new forms of Jewish activity, using modern terms or modern means to spread Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe realized that the secularity of modern world concealed a deep yearning for spirituality. The Rebbe did not give up on the hippies in the 60s, and he knew how to address that. Where others saw the crisis of a dead staff, the Rebbe saw an opportunity for a new wave of renewal and redemption. Who was the Rebbe? One way to answer this question is he has that ability, unique ability, to see crisis as opportunity. Where others saw the end, he saw the beginning. Where others saw disintegration, he saw the potential for birthing. It remains one of the most empowering messages for each of us as an individual and all of us as a collective. I want to share with you Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky, the last living secretary of the Rebbe, may enjoy many a long and happy and healthy life, relates the following episode. It was around 1973 when the widow of Jacques Lifshitz, the renowned sculptor, had come for a private audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, shortly after her husband's sudden passing. In the course of her meeting with the Rebbe, she mentioned that her husband had died and he was nearing a completion of a massive sculpture of a phoenix in the abstract, a work commissioned by the Hadassah Women's Organization for the Hadassah Hospital on Mount Scopus in Jerusalem. As an artist and a sculptor in her own right, she said that she would have liked to complete her husband's work, but, she told the Rebbe, she had been advised by the Jewish leaders that the phoenix is a non-Jewish symbol. It could never be placed in Jerusalem. So Rabbi Krinsky continues. He was standing near the door to the Rebbe's office that night when he called him and said, "Please bring me the book of Job," from the bookshelf, which he did. And the Rebbe turned to chapter 29, verse 18. And there it says the words, I shall multiply my days like the chol, Chol. And the Rebbe proceeded to explain to Mrs. Lifshitz that the Medrash commentaries explain that the verse using the words chol, that's a bird that lives for 1,000 years, then dies, and is later resurrected from his ashes. It's the direct reference to a phoenix, and clearly a phoenix is a Jewish symbol. Mrs. Lifshitz was absolutely delighted. The project was completed soon thereafter. In his own way, the Rebbe had brought new hope to this broken widow. And in the recurring theme of his life, he did the same for the spirit of the Jewish people, which he raised from the ashes of the Holocaust to a new, invigorated life. The Rebbe attempted to enact the miracle of blossoming staff every day of his life and in every person he came in contact with. In recent times, especially since October the 7th, 2023, our people have faced crisis on many fronts. These are not simple times, yet every crisis is an opportunity for rejuvenation and renaissance like never before. So all I can say on this very special day, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's join together and become ambassadors of light for the world. I'd like to share with you a story, a recent story that I came across, and it brings to my mind, and hopefully to everyone else's, the importance of opportunity. I'm talking to Richard Ruttenberg. I'm talking to everybody listening and watching us today. The story is that this person met an elderly Jew living in New Jersey who shared with him his incredible experience with the Rebbe. And I think it's a perfect story to retell today in honor of Gimel Tammuz as we celebrate and as we commemorate the Rebbe's yahrzeit today. His name is Moshe M. He grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and after graduating from Jewish day school, he went off to study in Yeshiva University in New York. It was 1965, right before Purim. Moshe missed his parents, but he didn't have money for the trip from New York to Cleveland. So he came up with an idea. Newspapers often ran ads for people who needed their cars driven from one city to another. He found one that needed to go from New York to Columbus, which is about 2.5 drive from Cleveland. Perfect. He would drive the car to Cleveland with his friend, spend the Shabbos with his parents, and then continue to Columbus to deliver the car. After that, he and his friend would drive back to Cleveland using his father's car. They left New York on Thursday night, and by Friday they arrived at his parents' home in Cleveland. They spent a wonderful Shabbos together, and on Sunday they set out for Columbus to deliver the car. Moshe's friends drove his father's car so they would have a way back. The day was bitter cold. The highway was coated in a layer of black ice, a thin, invisible sheet of ice that nearly impossible to see and incredibly dangerous to drivers, and Moshe drove right into it. As he was driving at a high speed, his car hit a patch of black ice and began spinning out of control, slammed with incredible force into the guardrail. The metal tore through the door and slashed his left leg severely, and he blacked out. The very fact that he survived was a miracle. By divine providence, a truck driver was right behind him and was able to radio emergency services for help. Another passing car contained a nurse who managed to pry open the car door, and apply a tourniquet to his leg. He was rushed to the nearby hospital, but the doctors quickly realized the injury was beyond what they could treat, so he was airlifted to another hospital. Eventually he found himself at Mount Sinai, the Jewish hospital in Cleveland, undergoing one surgery after another. He was completely bedridden, and the doctors told him bluntly that he'd probably never walk again. If he was lucky, he would walk with a limp. One day, as he was laying in his bed, a woman came to visit him. She introduced herself as she was part of the Bikur Cholim, Jewish Bikur Cholim visitation of the sick, and she was part of this, visiting the Jewish patients. And as she left, she said, "Listen," she put a card down, a name and address, and said, "Listen, why didn't you write a note to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and ask him for a blessing?" She was a Lubavitcher herself. Later that day, With the help of the nurses, he wrote a letter to the Rebbe, asking for a blessing. 10 days go by, he receives a package. Inside the letter, from the Rebbe's secretary, the Rebbe wishes him a complete recovery. And indeed, he would make a complete recovery, as he now tells the story. He was able to dance on both feet at every one of his children's weddings. He just celebrated his 80th birthday. That's not the most important part of the story. The real story is that he received from Brooklyn a package, right? He wrote to the Rebbe from the hospital bed. He received a package. Inside the package he received from the Rebbe were 2 boxes of shmura matzah and a bottle of wine. In addition to the Rebbe's blessings for a complete recovery, the letter from the Rebbe said that he was being appointed as a shliach, as a representative, to lead a seder for other Jews in the hospital. Moshe was very moved. And next time the hospital chaplain came around, he expressed his wishes to do this. And sure enough, they were able to move his bed to the door of 2 people who were in isolation. They couldn't come out. There were 2 Jewish people in an isolation room. And through the window, the holes in the window, they were able to have, he conducted the Seder in his hospital bed with the wine and the matzah provided by the Rebbe. My friends, this is the story that this man that I just read about. He made Kiddush for them. He sang Manishtana. Later on, it was a very moving experience. Years later, he was able to come to New York. He continued his studies in Yeshiva University, but then he went back to tell the Rebbe of his what he'd done. He did, kind of, reported back. The point of the story, my friend, is the Rebbe not only gave him a blessing for his recovery, is that he was lying helpless in the hospital bed, unable to move, completely dependent on others, and the Rebbe made him into a shliach, gave him a mission, gave him the strength to uplift others and bring joy of Passover to his fellows. So instead of lying there feeling sorry for himself, the Rebbe got him to think, who can I help? And that, right there, was the beginning of his healing. And that's what the Rebbe did for you and me, for all of us. No matter whatever we're going through, the Rebbe would redirect it. What's happening in community? What can we do to make? And I found in life as well, when you occupy yourself helping others, you actually help yourself as well. This was the Rebbe's formula. Help another person and you'll find your own blessings as well. So on this very important day of Gimel Tammuz, the 31st anniversary of the Rebbe's passing, we remind ourselves to be strong, to learn from the Rebbe, help others. And again, you can write to olchabad.org online, and you can send a note to the Rebbe's graveside. People will take it over there, and it's a very important day to be able to receive blessings and to join in this vision of making the world a beautiful place for the whole world, and ultimately for the coming of Mashiach. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, wishing everybody a wonderful day. Be inspired. Thank you for joining us.